All right. Welcome, Jen, to the Fempreneur podcast. Please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your business.
Absolutely. So, hi, everybody. I'm excited to be here. Um, a little bit about my story. My background is, business and marketing. My current practice is in the wellness space, but, it really all comes together. And so, I work with clients, one on one and in small groups. As a health coach, my specialty is weight management, metabolic health, cardiovascular health. And then taking sort of my business and marketing background, I also work with entrepreneurs or, in particular, wellness entrepreneurs to help them round out their business, create multiple streams of income, all that good stuff. So, it's really my passion for my own health and well-being and figuring all that stuff out has really turned into a mission and a passion for helping people help themselves with what it is that they're really looking to focus on and grow. And a lot of times, it might be the business side, it might be the wellness side. Oftentimes it's both.
Right. And your business is called A Salad with a Side of Fries, correct?
Yes. Yeah. Salad with a side of fries is the podcast. The website is A Salad with a Side of Fries because, as many of you entrepreneurs know, you go to buy that URL and they want a bajillion dollars. So, but
Yeah.
it's salad with a side of fries. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And so you have the podcast and you have your website, which I was checking those two things out today. And I just really love everything that you're putting out there into the world. You're just doing such a fantastic job of consistently putting out really valuable content that is inspiring, that's uplifting. You also, you teach some really, I think, like really tangible topics as well. We're going to get into the four critical, I think you said pieces, but I like to use the word
Yeah.
keys. The four
Yeah.
critical keys for entrepreneurs. We're going to get into that. But first, I want to know more about your story. Like, what happened to you in your life that made you feel like, oh my gosh, I should be a wellness coach?
Right. Right. Because that was definitely not what happened at all. Um, or what I thought was going to happen, So I went to business school. I have a BBA, which is really an MBA, but you do it in undergrad. I went to the University of Michigan, and in their business school, they teach us to be incredible employees and to learn how to function within an organization and, in leadership roles in organizations.
Mm-hmm.
There are some things that are focused on entrepreneurship, but it's not necessarily, the primary kind of conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And then, these big companies recruit us. We go to work, and it's very much not the same kind of collaborative environment as it was in business school. Like in business school, the way that you get through it is basically the second years help the first years, and it's sort of the expectation that when you're a second year, you'll help, the first years. And then we get into these companies and they are much more, and it's not to say that business school wasn't competitive, but it's much more that everyone was almost skeptical of everybody else, right? Like, I'm not going to help you because there's only, one seat up there at the next level or two seats at that next level or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And the other things that I noticed in, my first jobs out of undergrad was, well, not only did I learn a lot more of what I don't want to do than what I do want to do, it was also a piece of wanting to own my own time. And I'll share this story because it hit me like a ton of bricks. So, first job out of undergrad, I'm working at this ad agency that specialized in catalogs. And my family was planning like our annual end of year vacation. And I had to go into the computer system and request the time off.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, hand to face, walking into a wall. I was like, wait a minute. I am asking permission for access to my own time.
To live my own life.
Right. And I was like, no. Right? I don't know what I'm going to do. I just know that I will not work for somebody else for the rest of my life. Right? I am a big believer in learn on their dime and then take it all and use it for yourself.
Yeah.
And yet it was just like, okay, I don't know what it is going to be, but I know it's not this, you know? And I went out looking for things. I went out looking for things that I could do in my spare time that would eventually, initially the idea was like, I'll just make some extra money and invest it and then be able to retire early. And then all the things I thought of to do on the side were either sounded totally miserable or weren't that feasible. So when I was at Michigan, I was a writing tutor. And I was like, great, I live in New York City. I'll go down to NYU. I'll tutor kids at NYU. And then I remember, I had to be at work at 8 a.m. And I was like, how am I going to be up all night because somebody forgot they had a paper due? And then be at work at 8 a.m. and do all the other things in a day, So I was looking for something to do, trying to figure out all those pieces. And at the same time, I had my own, I call saga of health and weight management and trying to figure all that stuff out. And then worlds collided because I learned about curriculum, really is what it is, but I learned this information that completely changed my life. Like the only thing that allowed me to say I kicked my food issues. And I was like, I felt like it was the nutrition education we're all supposed to know, but no one ever taught us. And so then I was like, everybody deserves this. And why isn't this what we learned? So I became an insatiable student and I was so excited about it that I was like, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to do on the side and eventually work for myself. I built my practice on the side for 12 years. So my full-time jobs, I know, way longer than I expected, but there was a piece of that where like, it just made sense. It was fine, because I wasn't married. I didn't have kids. It was like, why not keep collecting on both sides until it's no longer sustainable, or I choose not to do that anymore. Yeah. And over those years too, my full-time job changed. And so, that had implications on those 12 years, but I left my full-time job July of 2019. I launched my podcast in August of 2019, frankly, more because I had gotten into listening to podcasts and I don't know what to do with free time. And so I was like, I'm going to try this and we'll see what happens. And then, the rest, as they say, is history. But here we are almost 6 years later and I get to sit with you.
Yeah, love it. Well, on the topic of podcasting, before we move into other things, and this isn't a question I planned to ask you, but what's one of like the coolest things that's happened to you that makes, because of your podcast, that makes you so glad that you started it and that you stuck with it? Like it could be a connection, a mentor, an aha moment, a trip you got to go on. Like, I don't know, like anything super cool that you attribute to your podcast?
It's a whole new network. It's the network within the industry, but then even with other experts and people who are all over the world helping people, live well. And, it feeds that part of me that is the insatiable student. So I am always learning and growing and connecting. And I think that for me is like, one of my favorite pieces. And I think the community of people in the podcast industry is just tremendous. Yeah. They're some of the best people.
Awesome. Can you think of one, like even just shout somebody out that you've interviewed that you're so glad you met?
Oh, that's a good question. So I'll give you one. Actually, her episode just aired this week. So Jill Teets, and this is a good one because it sort of crosses both things. So we actually met at a podcast conference, and we would see each other at these podcast conferences that happen like twice a year. So we finally collaborated on an episode. I interviewed her. She's her podcast is called Sober Powered. I did a couple episodes this January called Dry Beyond January. And so one of those was an interview with Jill. And when we sat down to do the interview, it was actually the first time she and I saw each other on Zoom. Like we had always connected live and in person.
Wow.
So that's just a fun, it's like a crossover of the two industries. But she's a gem of a human. Her show is a really beautiful mix of the science and the practical, which I think, salad with a side of fries is as well. So, yeah.
Wow, it's a great person to have met through podcasting and like because you were at that conference. I love that.
Yeah,
I love that. That's cool. Actually, she's the one that I did the most sort of listening to today because it's the most recent one, and I definitely plan to listen to that episode, that interview with her, and then check out her podcast because I think everything she's teaching and sharing is really, really valuable stuff. And as someone who knows that I will quit drinking one day, but I'm not sure when, now is not the time, I am gathering information sort of lightly at this point in my life. So I'm very
I still enjoy a drink, now and then, but I drink way less than I used to. I mean, when I worked in finance, we drank a lot. That's the culture of the finance industry for sure. But even over the years, it's just become less and less.
Yeah, absolutely. So you were interested in working in finance. You thought finance was your future, or you just kind of had to do it because it sort of supported your other things that you wanted to do?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I mentioned I was working at this ad agency that specialized in catalogs. I went in-house with one of my clients instead of working at the agency. I was basically doing the same role, but working, for their company instead of an agency. And I had started my practice as a health coach while working on these catalogs. And at the time, I really was not adept at being able to keep my business running when I had to travel, when I was on location for a photo shoot or preparing or, coming back and those kinds of things. And so it was one of those pieces of like, if my focus is my business, then what is the job that allows me more time, effort, and energy to build that? And this role at a hedge fund kind of fell in my lap actually through a model that I worked with at the time. And it was more money and no travel. And so I was like, okay, this serves a purpose. I only took that job because it allowed me to build my business, right? That was the goal. And so I really wasn't looking for that career in that space. Even though I could have kept going and, had this tremendous career there, it really wasn't my passion. It wasn't my focus. It was a means to an end, Yeah.
Cool. So my next question is more about your story. What's one of those big challenges that stands out to you when you look back on your business growth journey so far that almost broke you or really made you kind of have to regroup or pivot? Like, what did you have to overcome to stay in business so far?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think the side hustle piece has like pros and cons, right? Like on the plus side, I had this job so that even if my business wasn't making the revenue that I ideally wanted or wanted to get to, it was okay. I wasn't necessarily in that desperate place. But the other side of that is, and I sort of alluded to it before, like when I changed full-time jobs, I underestimated the toll it would take on my business of having to prove myself again.
Mm.
Like when you've been in a job for a little while and you have a little bit of a reputation, you can take liberties that in a new role you can't necessarily because they don't know you. And so there were definitely pieces of that where when my job, whatever it was, got busy or very stressful, the toll was on my business, not on their stuff. And it's very common and natural, I think, for our energy to follow the money.
Yeah.
And so when more money is coming from the job than the side hustle or the business that we're trying to grow, it's natural that that gets more of the energy. And then, we maybe don't have as much left for our stuff as we wanted. And so certainly 12 years wasn't the objective, and in having this, side hustle situation. And there were a million times I contemplated quitting. I was like, wouldn't life be so much easier if I didn't have all this stuff that I felt like I, should be doing when I left the office, And I would always go through like the same thought pattern, right? When I had this thing of like, wouldn't it be easier? Maybe I should just quit, right? Give it up. One piece is I had a mentor years ago who also said, if you haven't contemplated quitting, you're not doing it right. And so that was a piece of like, okay, this doesn't mean that that's necessarily my best move, right?
Right.
But I would do a mental exercise of playing it out. So, okay, I quit. I don't have to do any of this other stuff. I tell all my clients, I hook them up with somebody else. Like, I don't have clients anymore. I don't need to do any of those things. That means that I am choosing this full-time job and that life. And I was like, but no, right? Like, I don't want to choose that.
Yeah.
That's not what I want the rest of my life to look like. So if I'm not going to choose that, then it means I need something else. So what would this something else be if not what I'm already doing? And so I would just keep plugging along and say, okay, right? Like, this is just the path. It might take longer. That's fine. But realistically, if I give it up, I'm not going to be satisfied and I'm going to want something else. And this is the something else that I already know gets me excited.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you have like coaches or mentors that helped you ask that question, that invited you to ask that question, that kept you revisiting that question? Or like, how did you move through that?
Yeah, maybe my therapist. I mean, I don't remember exactly. Like maybe she said, like play it out. One of those times where I was like, maybe I should just not do this anymore.
Yeah.
Certainly I've had a million mentors and, guides and colleagues and people to learn from. And, but all of them were coming from their history and their perspective on things. It wasn't necessarily that they were in my exact situation, and so I think it was probably my therapist that asked that question, or recommended the exercise of like, play it out. But like I said, like, I don't even remember who it was that said, if you haven't contemplated quitting, you're not doing it right. But it's this thing that I keep replaying in my mind because this entrepreneurial stuff is not for everybody, And there's something to be said for everybody has had this thought, And if you haven't, just wait for it, like it's probably coming at some point, that there was comfort in that there wasn't something wrong with me, that I wasn't messing things up. That this is part of that process.
I think that is the reason why, I know that is the biggest reason why my community of female entrepreneurs in Calgary, Alberta has really grown and continues to grow and thrive and has such a great reputation because the magic of just getting a bunch of super crazy, ambitious entrepreneurial women together, it's like it's unmeasurable how magical that is because instantly everybody feels more normal.
Yep.
When in and of itself is like a gift. It's like, here you go,
Yeah.
have the best gift ever to know that you're never going to feel like this is easy. And that's not what you've signed up for. You've signed up for filling your soul because it's either you fill your soul, like you said, with something that you know you need to do because it's like you want to do it, but you aren't expecting it to be easy. And it's going to come with a whole set of difficulties that a job doesn't come with, but you also don't have to ask for time off. You have to just structure your life
Right.
and business accordingly for what you want.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I love that. It's a great story and a great reminder too for the people that are maybe chasing this vision of an easy business. It's like, I don't know.
That, yeah. Maybe eventually.
Yeah, I
You
think
know.
it gets easier. I
Yeah.
really do. I remember feeling a tipping point happen and I was like, oh wow, this got really easy. And I felt really nervous for about 6 months. I was like, oh no, something's gonna go, something's gonna happen.
Right.
And then I
Right.
realized that like, no, I think I kinda got out of the rough sea into the calm water. But it's still it brings new things because there is a bit of complacency that happened at that point in time. I'm a bit of a chaser. I like to chase the hard things.
Well, it's interesting you say that because there's also this thing in, in business and entrepreneurship and in business coaching that we do that where, a lot of times entrepreneurs, like we have that drive, we have that creative thing, that thing about like starting something new, creating something new. We know we're so comfortable in the make it happen that when it gets to that point of smooth waters, we don't know what that's like. And
Yeah.
so it's this idea where instead of the actual objective, by the way, in that moment is to just rinse and repeat and keep going and do the stuff that's not glamorous, and like
Yes.
keep doing the things that got you there. But our
Mhm.
tendency is to go, well, then I must need the next new thing. It must
Mhm.
mean that I need to get back into that creation, figure out the next, and back into that make it happen energy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting reflecting on this with you right now because that's like you said, rinse and repeat. I've been saying that since the end of last year because that's exactly what happened was I got into the calm waters and I was like, oh no, what's gonna happen? Like, giant sea serpent is gonna come up and sink my boat. Like I was like, oh boy. But then I created all of these to-dos and these new tasks that hadn't been working for me in the past. They were new things that I was adding because I kind of felt like I should do something hard because
Right.
everything else wasn't hard anymore. And then it took me a bunch of suffering through, adding things like that to my life to realize that I didn't need to do this other stuff. I mean, I'm not saying I'm not glad that I tried it. I think we all have to go through that phase. But
Yeah.
then about 6 or 12 months into that, I was like, oh, I found myself naturally falling back into the things that worked. And even though it was easy, I still enjoyed it. But I just changed, the message I was telling myself about it. I was like, it's okay that it's easy. It doesn't mean that a sea serpent is going to come out of the ocean and kill me. It's okay. Like, it's okay.
Right.
I don't have to create my own sea serpents.
Exactly. Right. And it's like reminding ourselves that the easy is what we've been looking for. Right?
Oh, it's so
Like
true.
this is what we've been creating,
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's so interesting. It's actually really fascinating to talk through it with you. I'm finding some more clarity around it today. So thank you for that, Jen.
Yeah.
Back to you now. So I'd like to know more about 10 year ago Jen and what you would tell her if you could sit with her and give her some of your today wisdom, like 10 years younger you.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm trying to think what was 10 years ago, right? So
Yeah.
2015, I was in the thick of working in hedge funds, building my business, a bit of burnout, Like I ended up in adrenal fatigue and the whole night, trying to, literally burning the candle at both ends, as they say. That's, so cliche. Sorry. You know. Um and I think it's funny because so I was asked a question of what I would say to like my teenage self on a podcast.
Yeah.
And the thing that came up was like perfection not required.
Mm.
Like release the vice grip.
Mm-hmm.
It's all going to be fine.
Yeah.
Everything is going to work out.
Mm-hmm.
Perfectionism is, while it can serve us so well in some areas of our lives, it doesn't necessarily serve us in other areas.
Yeah.
And when that, I'm a Virgo, so like I'm not really big into astrology, but I know, I'm a perfectionist, I'm a planner, and
Yeah.
so that piece of it, I think, is part of how I ended up in adrenal fatigue and burnout.
Mm.
And so if I could let go of the vice grip, recognize that perfection is not required
Mm.
to build my business, to show up at my job, to do all the things, to show up in my life.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that it would have been a weight lifted, but I also know, as you said, sometimes we have to, even if somebody said this to us, we have to sometimes experience it,
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's a cycle. I think, you go through phases where you get really like comfortable, and yeah, the water's really calm and you're like, wow, this is cool. So you start saying, yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, I'll go to that conference. Yeah, I'll do. And then all of a sudden you're like, whoa.
Right.
And then you're like, have to blow a bunch of people off and piss off a few people and drop a few balls and be like, whew, okay, we're back down. And then
Right.
6 months later, you're like, yeah. I don't know. Are you like that too?
Yes, 100%. There's a book, Shonda Rhimes wrote a book. Do you know Shonda Rhimes, like the TV writer? So
No.
she is like the writer and producer behind Grey's Anatomy and How to Get Away with Murder and like a bunch of TV shows and stuff.
Yeah.
So she came out with a book called Year of Yes.
Oh.
And I listened to this book, and it was basically like she just committed to saying yes for a year and seeing what happened. And it's a great book. It like, so many things happen because she just said yes. I live in a world, I think like you, where I need to practice saying no.
Yeah, I need
Right.
the year of no. I'm down for that.
Right. And so it's more, like it's so interesting because I'm in a place now, not necessarily when I read that book, but of saying like, I need to not say yes immediately. I need to just pause.
I think the waiting period is a good tip for sure.
Exactly. And being comfortable, I feel like we've heard this a million times too, but no is a complete sentence.
Yeah.
Like saying no. One of my favorite phrases that I have implemented over the last few years is my next availability is. So there are certain things where, people need, they want to have this conversation or whatever. My next availability is. And so that helps me stay in the driver's seat of my calendar and my time.
Yeah.
Even when it is something that is a yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So that you have parameters around it instantly, and you feel like you're, I like that. Makes sense. So to recap what you would tell your 10-year younger self, it's to do with perfectionism and the fact that, almost warning your 10-year younger self that you are a perfectionist, you haven't realized it yet. Here's why we're going to steer things a little differently.
Yeah.
Because you're going to burn yourself out.
Yeah.
Do you think you could have stopped yourself from burnout if you could have talked to her?
I don't know.
Or do you think that was like a valuable lesson to learn and even make you more relatable as a health coach and a business coach?
Yeah, I mean, I think yes in all the things, and I also think that at the time, if somebody wanted to talk to me about how being a perfectionist didn't serve me, all I would be able to respond with was all of the ways that it did serve me. I don't know that I wanted to hear that at the time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, like this is a lesson you've got to learn, so you're going to be okay, but it's going to suck for a while. Like, I guess you
Right.
could just say that to her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And then your podcast, like, who is it for? Who needs to listen to it? Who's going to get the most value out of it? Who's like, your avatar that you're thinking of when you create your episodes?
Yeah, for sure. So, salad with a side of fries is wellness without the weirdness, right? Like if you would go somewhere and order salad and a side of fries, or order salads and split fries with a friend, like this show is for you, right? It is wellness, but for real life, because I'm not going to sit here and tell you to only eat foods that are green or to never eat at a restaurant. This is, we're going to eat out. We're going to skip the grocery store. Like, who wants a life without fries or dessert?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So how do we, right? Or tacos or margaritas. Although, we're learning on the margaritas, right?
Learning.
But it's about how to live our lives and have our health too. So it's very much for the people, like I end up with a lot of health professionals who listen because I'm very evidence-based, science-backed. But it's very much tangible, actionable, realistic approach. Because one of the things that made the biggest difference for me was understanding why. Like there are a million things that will tell us, eat this, not that, right? And we live in these shoulds. But once I understood why, then it became a choice. And the food decisions were not emotional of why do I suck or not suck that I can't just not eat the free croissant in the office, right? To, wait a minute, I understand why the croissant is appealing. That means I actually need this. Let me start with that and see what happens. And so it's really for anybody who has ever struggled with their health or wellness or wants to prioritize their health and wellness and says, there's a lot of information out there. I don't know how to wade through it and also figure out what's right for me.
Yeah. Well, I feel like you talked about the critical keys for entrepreneurs or the critical pieces. Are they very parallel to the critical pieces for feeling well without feeling weird?
That's a good question. They're not really, but I do think, so the 4 critical pieces or keys are leverage, finding your niche, contemporary networking, and personal wellness. And so the overlap is in that personal wellness piece, because I think for so many entrepreneurs and business owners, especially in the beginning, we are our business. And guess what? If you go down, right? If you have a cold, if you're stuck in bed, knock on wood, something major, your business is closed without you. So taking care of ourselves is taking care of our business.
Wow, that's huge.
It's really much more important than I think people tend to recognize.
Definitely.
So that's more of the overlap than necessarily, the fundamentals kind of being the same. But I
feel like I feel like leverage is the one I want to tap into a little bit, because I feel like the other ones are a little more self-explanatory. But that one, you piqued my interest on that one. Talk more about leverage.
Yeah. So it goes back to this idea that, like, if we are our business and if we're not working or doing, the business isn't making money, then we don't actually have a business. We simply own our own job. right?
Yeah.
So leverage is about how do we disconnect the income from our time?
Mm.
Is the leverage other people, right? Where we're earning from the time that they're putting in?
Mhm.
Is the leverage other streams of income, right? Is there a way that I can take this relationship with a client and have other streams of income from that one relationship that we already have, right? Where regardless of whether or not I see you, there's revenue generated from this relationship.
Mhm.
So it gets to be where we want to kind of look at each person's business model and business and who you serve and what you do to say, where are the opportunities for leverage? Does it mean expanding with other people? Does it mean expanding with different offerings? Right? Leverage is a lot of why we now all the time see people coming up with these online courses, right? It's do the work once, continue to get paid.
Mhm.
That's also now a very crowded space, but it gets us thinking insofar as saying, how can we disconnect the revenue from our time
Mhm.
and create leverage so that we can go on vacation, we can do these other things and have money still flowing through the company, through the business, through your life,
Mhm.
even though you want to, go sit on a beach for a week, a month, a year, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Can you give us like maybe an example from your business where you sort of sat back and put your business coach hat on and kind of looked at your business through, the lens of maybe not yourself and decided how to leverage and what to leverage and how that actually played out for you?
Yeah. So I think, one of the pieces is I have access and I work with a lot of different products and supplements in my practice. And what that allows me to do is pair people with what they're looking for or what's going to be the best, match. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not that I sit here and push product. It's that number one, people are already spending this money,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Statistically, like over 70% of people purchase supplements, right?
Yeah.
So by offering options and high
Mm-hmm.
quality options, I am essentially capturing dollars that they're spending anyway, ensuring that they get a quality product that is worth the dollars they're spending, that's actually going to get them the results that they're looking for.
Yeah.
But so what ends up happening is I might work with somebody for health coaching. On my curriculum, I work with them for 12 weeks. And they almost transition from being clients to customers, right? Like we always have that client relationship, but there are people that I coached 10, 15 years ago who are purchasing a multivitamin.
Yeah.
And I'm making money from that relationship that we built, even though on a daily basis, it doesn't require any effort or energy. I wake up to emails that say you have an order that was placed,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? Like that's the gold. That's the magic of like, how can we figure out how to wake up to emails that say, congratulations,
Yeah.
like this much volume
Absolutely.
happened while you were asleep.
That's great. Okay. Well, it's a great example.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Just for the sake of time, I want to wrap it up. I am really happy that I got to spend this time with you, getting to know you. You're in New York, right?
Likewise, I am. Want to come visit?
I've never been to New York, so yes, I do.
Yay.
I
Yeah.
do. Absolutely. So yeah, we'll stay in touch. And yeah, thank you for your time and thank you for all of the amazing work that you're doing and for just, yeah, taking the time to share your stories with us today. And I wanted to dig in a little bit into kind of like a typical day in the life of you and how you make your money, but I know you do, health coaching and all that. So if there are women listening to this that want to, inquire about health coaching, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, send me an email, Jenn, Jenn, at Jenn Trepeck, JENNTREPECK.com. Also on my website, asaladwithasideofries.com. You can book time on my calendar right from my website.
Awesome.
Hold on, I can't breathe. Hold on. Excuse me. You can book time with me right on my calendar. Like, I love chatting with people and hearing about, what you want to do and how we can help you make that happen.
Okay.
There almost isn't a typical day for me because, yeah, but
That's awesome.
I will say, hold on. Excuse me.
I've kept Jenn talking for too long. She has lost her voice.
I'm like choking on air. It's so weird. I will say most days my workout is at 9 a.m. and I start things after that.
Yeah.
And, it's a lot of building relationships and talking to people and, having conversations like this, which is one of my favorite things I love. And, kind of following where the energy is. There, like we said, there's sort of pros and cons to always having new products and projects and things like that. But I think it's the beauty of being an entrepreneur and being in a service capacity that the greatest and best part of every day is hearing my clients' transformations and seeing the difference in their life as a result of what they've learned.
And so where would be the best place for our Fempreneur listeners and viewers to maybe see some testimonials from your clients? Like, is Instagram a good place, or is it more so your website, or both?
Yeah, either, both. They're there in both places. My website is asaladwithasideofries.com. All social media, I'm at Jenn Trepeck, JENNTREPECK.
Okay, fabulous. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Jenn. It's been wonderful getting to know you. And now I'm losing my voice, so I think it's time for us
contagious through the internet, right? Well, thank you, Lyndsie. I love it.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thanks everyone for tuning in. I'm Lyndsie Barrie at yycfempreneurs.com, currently coming at you from Playa del Carmen, Mexico. If you want to know more about how I built a business I can run from anywhere, check out my new 25 completely free marketing videos that are dropping on YouTube starting February 1st. All right, bye for now, everyone.